and welcome to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Hope everyone had a great weekend. It's a Monday edition of the program, and we're going to get to Coach Gene Chizik here shortly. Second portion of the program will be joined by Florida Gators senior writer, FloridaGators.com, Chris Harry, talk a little college basketball. But let's go to the Titan MR Hotline, and we're joined by Coach Gene Chizik. Good morning, Coach. How are you?
Great, Shane. How are you doing, man?
Doing well. Coach, before we talk about what you're doing now in the state of college football, I like to have, when I have former coaches or players, which are both, on my show, I like to go back to their early days. You grew up here in the state of Florida. I don't think a lot of people know you are a Gator. You played football here at the University of Florida. When you came out of high school, did you always want to be a Gator, or did you almost choose going to play somewhere else?
Yeah, so, back in the day when I grew up, Shane, it was interesting because, people think there was always 100 channels. There weren't. There were 3 when I was growing up in the state of Florida. And to be quite honest, man, I mean, it was Florida, Florida State, a little bit of Miami. They came on a little bit in the middle 80s. But when I grew up, and I'd turn on that TV on Saturday afternoons, and I'd watch John Reeves. I'd watch Carlos Alvarez. I would watch those guys way back in the day, Lee McGriff, and, man, I fell in love with the Gators early. And, growing up in Florida, like I said, you basically picked one of the 3, and that was my team, man. So it was easy for me.
I believe you played for Charlie Pell, correct?
Yes, exactly.
What was it like playing for Charlie Pell? Let everybody know.
Well, Shane, it was a really different time because he had just came in. Matter of fact, he had just come in from Clemson, and it was a culture shift. It was him trying to take Florida to the next level. That's why they brought him in. The recruiting level went up exponentially, and it was tough. It was one of those deals where, he had to lay a foundation early, which he did. Back in the day, there was 3-a-days when you came and reported for fall practice, and it was tough. But he set a great culture. He was a great man. I really respected him a lot. And, he's the one that really started turning that thing in the early 80s and turned it around, in the middle 80s. And it started with him and how he recruited and the foundation that him and the coaches set.
Coach, when you look back at your playing days, what was the one rivalry game that you enjoyed playing the most? I think nowadays the Florida-Georgia game is so big. That and OU and Texas are the only games that are played on neutral sites. Was there one that stood out in your mind that you enjoyed the most?
Well, back then it was obviously the Georgia game. Shane, that's so hard because having played there and having played in this league, the SEC, I mean, essentially, yes, Georgia's the biggest cocktail party, the whole deal, but LSU was a big deal. Auburn was a big deal. Florida State, back in the day, Florida State, where, now the rivalry's a little bit different. Not that the rivalry isn't there because there's so many players from the state that go to both schools. But back then, just the feel seems like it was a little bit bigger. And now that now that Florida State's kind of meshed over into the ACC, it's changed a little bit. But you can never minimize what that Florida-Georgia rivalry is for sure.
When you look back at your Gator career, before we start talking about you as a coach, is there one moment that stands out the most in your mind?
Well, It was just such a unique time. We talked earlier about trying to shift cultures, and back then when you're a player and that's all you're just trying to make it through every day. And what's really unique is then I got into the coaching world and I look back on all the things that Coach Pell did with us, trying to shift the culture, trying to do the things that was going to take Florida to the next level. And really, before Coach Spurrier got there, he was the one that really kind of manifested that and really set the foundation. So it was really just the entirety of the way he did it, being on the front end of all that. It was really, as I look back on it, a really interesting time. And really, for me, end up being a coach was really good for me to reflect on a lot of things.
We're speaking with Gene Chizik here on the Titan MR Hotline. You can follow him on Twitter at Coach Gene Chizik. Coach, you got into coaching. You started in high school and you bounced around to some colleges. You got your first head job at Iowa State, and then you moved over into the SEC with the Auburn Tigers. Talk a little bit about how that all happened. And, gosh, you won a national championship there. Talk about that season as well.
Yeah, so Shane, my story's probably very similar to a lot of guys. I got into coaching, and Danny Ford gave me my first opportunity to get into college. I was a high school coach down in the state of Florida for 2.5 years, which was a really great start for me. Then Coach Ford gave me the opportunity to go to Clemson. We were really good. The 2 years that I was a graduate assistant there, I met a lot of people with a lot of influence. One of the main ones was a guy named Brother Oliver. Bill Oliver was probably the best defensive coordinator in college football at that time. I got a chance to be under him for 2 years, which really, really helped me understand the game, understand what the important things and elements are of the game. And then my career just kind of took off from there. I did the traveling around. I got to be a coordinator at an early age at Stephen F. Austin, which is a 1AA, now FCS school. And I really got a chance to really learn how to be a defensive coordinator without all this pressure and all the things that come with it. And then when your career starts taking off, next thing I know, I'm a coordinator at Central Florida, then Auburn, then Texas, where we won, the first national championship I was involved in. Got the head job at Iowa State, and Auburn came calling. And look, I wasn't looking for another job. I thought I was going to be at Iowa State for 10 years because it was an enormous rebuilding scenario there. But after 2 years, Jay Jacobs called, and when they had an opening, brought me in, and 2 years later, we were able to win the national championship, which is the second one that I've been involved with, which was interesting for me because I had done it as a coordinator. I hadn't done it as a head coach. So within 5 years, I got a chance to do it with wearing each of those hats, which was a great time, a great memory, and just really thankful for a lot of players and to a lot of different people.
Now, that was the year Auburn, didn't y'all play South Carolina in the SEC championship game?
Yeah, so in 2010, we actually played them twice. We played them at home. I think it was game 4 of 2010 regular season with Coach Spurrier. Then we saw them again in the SEC championship game, which really kind of propelled us to play in the national championship with Oregon because we had a pretty big win in that SEC championship game.
What was it like? You being a defensive guy, and I don't know how many times you faced Coach Spurrier, but how difficult was it when you had to line up and face his offenses?
Well, he was a brilliant play caller, one of the best, if not the best, that I've ever been around. And I've gone against Coach Spurrier several times. And I started getting a little bit better of a feel for him, but he's one of these guys that he does a fantastic job of recognition of what our defense is doing on game day. You can watch all the film you want, Shane, and as a quarterback right now, when the game and the lights turn on, sometimes you're seeing a lot of new things, and he was that guy that could take advantage of what you were doing. Just a tremendous play caller, had his concepts built in, as you well know, and he wasn't getting away from those concepts, but he had enough concepts in there built in to really take advantage of what the defense was doing, and he was the master at it. And I'm just honored to be able to say that I, in my career, went against him several times, and but he was the man back then.
No doubt about it. So, your last coaching stint was at North Carolina. Then you line up, you do some work for the SEC Network, SEC Nation. Talk a little bit at what it's like working with Peter Burns and our own Chris Doering.
Well, it's really been awesome, Shane. I worked for the SEC Network in our inaugural year. I was sitting out of football that year. We got hired on and started with an incredible team. And ironically, when I left to go back into coaching to go to North Carolina, Chris Doering took my spot. And as fate would have it, 2 years later, I go back to the network, and him and I become partners along with Dari Noka. on Saturday nights. I've been doing that with him for 3 years, and it's been awesome. I love Chris Doering. You talk about just an incredible. People know him as an incredible football player, which he was every bit of that, as people know. What an incredible individual. He's just a great, kind human. We've hit it off so well on set, off set. Me, him, and Dari. Peter Burns in the mix with us. We just have a fantastic time. We love ball. We love talking about ball. We talk ball on set. We talk it off set. And it's just been a great scenario to really get to know Chris. But my whole crew for the SEC Network, they've just done a tremendous job of putting together the right people. And I love going to work every day on the weekends during the fall because of those guys.
Yeah, y'all do a tremendous job. And at Chris Doering Mortgage, they do mortgage lending right, helping home buyers throughout Gainesville and North Central Florida. Call Chris Doering Mortgage today at 352-244-0840. So, Coach, let me ask you this. You do a wonderful job and you enjoy working for the SEC Network. Any thoughts? Do you want to get back on the sidelines, coaching them up?
You know, Shane, I've been blessed. I've gotten offers pretty much every year to jump back in. I'm getting up there in age, but I still feel young. I still feel like I'm very connected to the game. I do a lot of consulting with a lot of different coaches. Matter of fact, today I'll be on a call with some coaches from the Big Ten, just talking defense. And I do that all year round, off season. A, because I love talking ball. B, because I always want to stay connected. I'll never say never. I've had opportunities every year. If the right one that I absolutely can't put my head on the pillow at night and feel good if I turn it down, that type of job, I won't say that I will never do that. Right now, that job hasn't happened, and there's been a lot of good ones out there, and I don't say that lightly, because there's been a lot of guys that have shown interest that I'm very appreciative in. But for me, I'm at the point in my life where life is great. I love doing TV. I love having my family time, traveling with my wife in the off season. Do I miss the football grind? Do I miss the players? Do I miss the relationships? Absolutely. But I did it for 30 years, Shane, and I have no regrets. I don't have to look back on anything and say, hey, I got to win championships. I was part of 7 division, 5 conference, and 2 national championships. So I don't have to look back and wish I did anything. If I do it, it's because it's a great scenario with great people, and I love the game. But again, that situation just hasn't been the quite right one for me up to this point, but I'll never say never.
Yeah. Coach, you got a couple kids. I think you got 2 girls and a son. Tell the story how your son got his name.
Yeah, so that's interesting, Shane, that you did some research on that. That's pretty awesome. My son got his name because I was coaching back in my young 20s, late 20s, early 30s. I was single. I wasn't married. I didn't have a family. Football was my family, and my players were my sons. And I had this one particular player who was just an incredible human being, a really, really good football player, incredible human being. I loved this kid with my heart. And one day he took a hit, and it didn't look good. He didn't really tell anybody about it, because he was one of those kind of guys that you'd have to just pull him off the field. And he didn't tell anybody about it. Went back out to practice in spring ball. A few days later, took another hit to the head and had an aneurysm, and basically ruptured, part of his brain, and he passed away. And his name was Callie Belcher. And, it was tough. He was a single child. I was close with his parents. And I made the vow to myself that day where he passed away, that if I ever had a son, that's really what I would name him. And I didn't tell that to the parents. I just said it to myself. Obviously, I didn't know whether I would have a son or not. I planned on it, but you know how that goes. Mm-hmm. And when I had my son, it was a no-brainer. His name is Callaway. So Callie for short, but it was through a former player of mine that I had, and I told his parents. I called his parents before I actually pulled the trigger on it, and I said, "Hey, I want to name my son Callie, and I want to make sure that I have your blessing on that," which they really appreciated. And lo and behold, I had a healthy boy, and he's playing college football right now, which I'm excited about. But his name is Callaway Chizik, so that's how he got his name, and I appreciate you asking. That means a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Coach, with the state of college football right now, everything's up in the air. Your thoughts, do you think we get the season in this year?
I do, Shane. I'm not going to say that I'm the eternal optimist and I see everything through these rose-colored glasses, but I'm really trying to approach this with some really great discernment. And look, let's be honest. I mean, you can sit here and the Ivy League said that, they're going to postpone football till the spring, but this is a different deal. We know everything in this culture, whether people want to admit it or not, is driven by money. And I'm not saying that people are going to disregard the health of players, but there are millions/billions potentially at stake here. That's where everything starts. I think as an optimist, I don't think there's any question we're going to start football. One thing that Scott Strickland said this, and I just totally agree with it. He said, predict nothing and prepare for everything. Because we don't really know what it's going to look like. But I know that there's a lot of smart people. I know there's a lot of smart medical people. There's a lot of smart people in positions of authority, starting with ADs and presidents, who know the importance of having football season. Will it be different? Absolutely. Will there be people in the stands? It won't look the same. Will there be adjustment of schedules? Where there'll be all of that. But I'm very, very optimistic that we are going to make it work. I think it's important for the country. I think it's important for the mental health of people, believe it or not. I think it's important for the players. And I think if you ask the players, what it was like, Shane, when you were playing, you were bulletproof. You put an S on your chest, a little virus isn't going to stop me, right? That's how the players see it. And the players want to play. And I don't think anybody's going to do anything to put players in harm's way over all other things. But I think that there's going to be the sentiment of we have to figure out a way to make this work to the best of our ability for everybody. And I think, honestly, that's what is happening behind closed doors, with the ability to adapt and adjust to a lot of different scenarios that can play out.
Yeah, we're speaking with Coach Gene Chizik. Last couple of things for you, Coach. Let's talk in the SEC. I want you to get your thoughts on Joe Burrow. What I saw last year, being a former quarterback, and I really like to analyze quarterbacks, it was the best college football season I've ever seen, what he did. You being a defensive guy, your thoughts on Joe Burrow and the year he had?
Well, I watch quarterbacks, Shane, probably from the same lens you do, except me thinking how I would defend it. And there were two things that, there's three things to me that make great quarterbacks. And this, and I don't try to complicate it. I've had 5 first-round draft picks on my team at quarterback, so I know what they look like. I think number one is guys that are quick decision makers. Number 2, guys that are accurate. And number 3, guys that are mentally and physically tough, particularly in this league, Shane, because this league can eat you up. And he was all 3 of those to the nth degree. The guy made tremendous decisions. He was accurate with the ball. He could put it in spaces that were really small. And let's be honest, he had receivers that when he didn't put it in those spaces and he wasn't as accurate as he wanted to be on throws, they could make the throws right. But you talk about a mentally and physically tough dude. He was a worker. He outworked everybody. He was a grad guy he turned in early. He left late. He was like a pro guy. But he was incredible. And let's not minimize the offense that Joe Brady put together along with Steve Ensminger. It was ready-made for him. There were built-in things that really made it right. Now, he had to make it go. So, look, if he gets to the NFL, they put the right pieces of the puzzle around him, then he has a chance to be great there. If they don't put the right pieces of the puzzle around him at Cincinnati, meaning starting with the offensive line, put the money in the offensive line, make sure that you have some dominant receivers on the outside, things can look different. But as far as a college football player at that time last year, I haven't seen one like it. And I've been around a lot of great ones. And I think it was the perfect storm and the perfect nightmare for defenses who tried to stop it.
I want to ask you, talking about the SEC West, I think everybody expects Alabama to be the team to come out of there and go to Atlanta this year. What is it like coaching at Auburn with the success that Alabama's had under Nick Saban? Whether it's the pressure that Gus has been under or anyone that's been the head coach there, how difficult is that?
Well, it's extremely difficult. And, Nick's success at Alabama is unprecedented. It'll probably never be matched. It puts a lot of pressure on coaches at Auburn. And, I was the winningest coach in the history of the school my first 3 years. And we obviously in year 4 had a bad year. And it was an immediate firing, and because of the pressure that's on coaches. Normally you'd think somebody might get another year, but that's not the way it works here. And you got to know that going in. And I'm one of those guys that never looks back and says, man, I wish this and this. Do I wish I would have had another shot? Yes. But you know what? Gus could win 6 or 7, and that could not be good enough because of the pressure that's being put on with the success of Alabama. And I'll tell you, it's tough. And it starts in this state. It's 365 days a year, Shane. It never changes. And if you don't have success, they're going to look for another guy. Now, that being said, Gus has beat him, several times. And that's really been a huge feather in his cap of keeping this job, even when they haven't been, totally, on board with what the record has been. And he'll always be on pins and needles here. Now, what he does a great job of, and I tried to do, was block all that stuff out and just coach. You just do it. And if it's not good enough, they'll get rid of you. If it is good enough, then you'll win a lot of games. So, but the pressure is there. The pressure is real, and it's not going away anytime soon.
Looking at the East, obviously Georgia's been the king in the last couple of years. But Dan Mullen has won 21 games, 2 major bowl games in his first 2 years at Florida. Do you think the Gators can take that jump and overtake the Bulldogs this year?
I think if there's ever a year for it to be done, it's this one, and here's why I say this. You just talked about the stats in the last 2 years and what Dan has done. I think Dan's done a tremendous job. And here's what I know in defending Dan Mullen's offenses. He's one of the best play callers in college football. He sees and knows exactly what he wants to take advantage of. It's the 3rd year in the offense with a returning coaching staff that's intact now for 3 years. And that's really, really hard to say. There's not many people in this league, Shane, that can say that they're on their 3rd year of a non-impacted coaching staff.
True.
And you have it on both sides of the ball with Florida. You've got talent. You got Kyle Trask coming back, Kyle Pitts. You got almost, an entire offensive line, a defense that, is always under Todd Grantham going to be one to be reckoned with because of the way he calls defense. He's a pressure guy. He puts pressure on you. So if there's ever a year where you're looking at, an opportunity for Florida to jump in the mix with Georgia, they got to do it. They've lost 3 in a row. Georgia's got a new offensive coordinator and never had time to have a spring practice. So I think there's definitely factors in there that could, be in play for them to take Georgia. Because to me, it's a 2-man race in the East. And if there's ever a chance for Florida in the last several years to be the man in the East, this would be the year.
So who's Gene Chizik picking right now today to play in Atlanta?
I'm going to pick Florida and Alabama. I really believe that. I believe that Florida is exactly what I just said they were. I think they're explosive. I think they're well coached. I think they've got continuity. And if you look at the West, Alabama's the only school that has the same continuity. They got the same offensive coordinator. They got the same defensive coordinator. They're always going to have talent, and they have enough returning guys from last year, several that I didn't think were going to come back, with the Alex Leatherwoods and the Najee Harrises and the Dylan Moseses of the world. They got enough talent coming back where I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with again in the West. So I'd be looking for those two teams.
Well, good deal. Coach, last thing I like to ask everybody that knows the head ball coach, knows Coach Spurrier pretty well. You got a story that you could let our listeners hear that is appropriate for a podcast?
Yeah, I do. So I was a GA and a nobody, Shane, back in 1989. He was the head coach at Duke. We go rolling into Duke with a team from Clemson that was star-studded, first-round draft picks everywhere. Just came off the ACC championship the year before, and we were rolling into Duke. And I'm going to say they might have had one win under their belt. We were about 3 or 4-0, 5-0 maybe. I can't remember what it was. And Spurrier comes out in the paper that week, and back then there wasn't internet, and he says our chances of beating Clemson are about 1 in a million. And we get into that game, and he threw the China route. He threw, you know what I'm talking about, the hitch corner route.
Yep.
About every which way you could create it. We go in there with absolutely zero chance to lose. He basically calls his team out in the paper and says, we're not worth a crap. There's no way we can win it. We limped out of there with a loss that day that ultimately cost us the 89 ACC championship. And I think Coach Spurrier went on a roll after that and might have won all of them. So that was my Coach Spurrier story, which was amazing at the time because nobody saw that one coming. But, hey, man, that's Coach Spurrier. You know the old ball coach.
He's a different dude, no question about it. Well, Coach, we appreciate you taking time to join us. I know you're busy. Stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you on SEC Nation here soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Shane.
That's Coach Gene Chizik. Join us on the Titan MR hotline. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Chris Harry from FloridaGators.com. You're watching and listening to Pot Up with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
Time out! Time out! Hey! Time out! Time out! Time out! There we go. Good.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills.
Let's give them something to cheer for now.
Our Gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Area Rug Masters, your number one choice in Gainesville for all your area rug cleaning services. Meldon Law, where you matter most. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte.
Bob in trouble, gets ready to throw, big hit.
Our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, The Digital Mortgage Guide, Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank, Gator Bait Media, Davis Gainesville Chevrolet, Miapa Latin Cafe, Gators Dockside, Aikido America Martial Arts and After School, Doreen Weeby Realtor, Caldwell Banker MM Parish, Radware, Style Cuts, Rap Spot, Ironwood Golf Course, TB Financial, Chris Doring Mortgage, Meadowbrook Golf Course, Darshakow Insurance, MB Listings, and Pomodoro Cafe. If you are interested in promoting your business on this show, you can visit our website, potupwithshane.com, and click on the Advertise button or call Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support this show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
He's looking, still looking. He's going for the end zone. He's got a touchdown!
Welcome back to Pot Up with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. I want to thank Coach Gene Chizik for joining us on the Titan MR hotline. And hey, folks, Celebration Point's where the Gators come to celebrate with premium brands like Bass Pro Shops, Starbucks, and Regal Cinemas. And coming soon, the HBC's new restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, and Visor's Rooftop Bar. We will see you at Celebration Point. We're now back to the Titan MR hotline. We're joined by our good friend from FloridaGators.com, senior writer, Chris Harry. Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Morning, Shane. How are you? Man, that is an impressive trophy case behind you. What was your winning percentage with those squads.
Not very good with all those other helmets. That orange helmet's pretty good winning percentage.
Yeah, that is good. Do you remember though, when I was covering the Bucks, when we came up and you, me, and Bianchi went to dinner at Harry Carey's the night before the Bucks played the Bears, and you were starting and you beat the Bucks on the way to the division title that year. I think it was 2001. I think. Do you remember that?
I forgot about that. You remember a lot of stuff. Well,
Right.
Chris, we got a lot to talk about here, and we appreciate you taking the time to join the show. But let's first start with what you covered mostly, Gator Hoops. The decision by Trey Mann coming back, I don't think it surprised a lot of people. But what does that do for this basketball team with Trey Mann coming back?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it surprised a lot of people. It may have been more of a surprise that he went into went through the underclassmen process in the first place. I mean, he was maybe the seventh man in the rotation last year. He started the season as a starter, averaged 5 points, a little over 2 rebounds a game. But again, not a surprise. What I've been saying and what I've been thinking is that this kid may take the biggest jump of anybody on the team this year, because he's very skilled. I think he struggled with some confidence issues. I think he was sometimes a little cavalier with the basketball, a little bit with the way he would handle it sometimes, and that was maybe on opponents' scouting reports last year, and they would double him a little bit and kind of backed him off somewhat in terms of his confidence. But I think late in the season, he was starting to figure some things out, not only with his game, but how he approached the game internally, how he went about his business and what have you. And I think, like with a lot of these guys, Shane, I think it's going to hurt him that he wasn't around the facility, wasn't able to go into the office every day, get in the gym every day with these coaches, do individual instruction, continue on his weight training. He was a guy who Preston Green really praised in terms of being in there a lot, working on his body and what have you. But all these guys, when they come back, and then they'll be starting to trickle in, obviously, probably in the next month or so, we'll be starting from square one relative to their where they are off-season conditioning and what have you. But it's definitely a boon that Trey Mann is coming back. Again, not a surprise, but he certainly can give this team some firepower. It's going to be a little different looking team, because you're talking about losing Andrew Nemhard. You're talking about losing Kerry Blackshear. The offense went through those two guys every possession. Now you remove them from the equation. You're removing probably, this is, frankly, the two maybe least athletic guys on the team. You have a chance to be a faster team, a more up-tempo team, something that probably Mike White's going to want to do. And I know he's going to want to do. He's talked about it.
Normally, I believe the basketball team, most of them would already be back on campus at this point. Right. You said they'll start trickling in. When were they, because I want to say, football started, June 7th or June 11th, somewhere around there, where they could start coming back gradually if you wanted. When are these guys allowed to get back on campus, and when they can start shooting around and working out?
Well, remember, in a normal world, it'd be the start of Summer B, which was a couple weeks, or which was last week, I believe. So that's when they would come in, and they'd have how X amount of hours a week that they're allowed to work out on the court with a ball, and they can start strength training. All that stuff's been pushed back. And originally, they were supposed to come in the last week of June. That's been pushed back, and now they're talking about the last week in July. For all we know, right? That could very well be pushed back as well. So it's kind of like a moving target dateline right now, and they're at home doing their stuff. That they're in communication with these coaches. They're giving them stuff to do. They're not allowed to monitor them on video or anything with workouts. That's an NCAA thing that was added during the pandemic. They're obviously allowed to be in touch with their strength and conditioning people. So they got to do stuff on their own, and that stuff's on the honor system. So it won't be hard to figure out who's adhered to that a little bit. You hope like a guy like Jason Chitobo, who lost 30 pounds last year and is going to be counted on a team that's going to need front court presence this year. You're talking Jason, you're talking Omar Payne, you're talking junior college signee Osi Osifo. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm working on that. I think that's how you do it. And then you got Anthony DeRugi coming back, who's kind of a smaller 4-5 kind of guy. Just how these guys are going to matriculate into the program and take on bigger roles in terms of front court and what have you, because this is right now looks like a perimeter-oriented team, and we've seen those with Mike White teams. Not this past year when Kerry Blackshear wasn't here.
The good thing about basketball is that's one thing that you can do a lot by yourself.
You can
grab the ball, go down to the park, wherever, find a gym and shoot.
If you do it right. You can't just sit there and try to make these crazy shots.
Right.
If you do it right and set the cones out there or the chairs, what have you, and have someone. Yeah, if you do it right, you can do something about it, and you can do it outside, which is cool.
Yeah, we're speaking with Chris Harry. You can follow him on Twitter at GatorsChris. Chris, let's talk about football. I know you cover football as well. Supposedly the SEC top dogs are supposed to meet today, kind of make a decision. We've seen the Big Ten go straight to conference games. Explain to me and our listeners why these conferences want to play just conference games. It makes no sense to me, and I understand from a testing standpoint that if the SEC has X amount of dollars towards testing and you're going to play the Sun Belt Conference, Troy's of the world, you may be kind of scared that they're not testing the proper way. But it makes no sense to me if they're within an hour and a half, 2 hour drive, why you can't play that non-conference game.
I think if you listen to what the Big Ten said, one of the reasons they did it was flexibility in scheduling, because they're talking about, okay, we're only going to play conference games. Well, they got some conference games in September. If I stick a gun to your head right now, I say, Shane, are they playing games, college football games in September? What are you going to say to that?
No.
Okay. So now they have some flexibility to start by not having these other games. Maybe we can start moving some chess pieces around to find some dates where they can start playing these games. Now, the next logical alternative, obviously, is to push it back. Push it back to when? Push it back to spring? Is there a happy medium between now and spring? I don't know, but I think some of the discussions, obviously, it's got to center on football because football is the 1,000-pound gorilla that funds everything. But they still got to talk about fall sports relative to soccer, relative to volleyball, whatever some of these other sports have. If they're gonna push, they're gonna go to spring. What happens to the fall sports? Are they eliminated or not eliminated? But do you cancel those seasons? You cancel the spring seasons. It's just there's so many unanswered questions, and you can answer them today at a meeting, but they could be unanswered questions a week from now, tomorrow. So to answer your question, I don't have an answer to your question, but if you eliminate those games, it'll open up some further options in terms of just stuff to be proactive with, or maybe give them some flexibility when the time comes around when we're actually going to play games. And let's keep our fingers crossed that that's going to happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I've had some discussions with different people on my shows about, kind of you get your Power 5 guys and then the group of 5 in the smaller schools, let them play their own separate deal, which I get it. But, there's a report that came out with the Big Ten canceling all their non-conference games. The MAC had 11 games scheduled against the Big Ten, over $17 million that the MAC is going to lose out on. And Kent State, who's in the MAC, was going to play Kentucky, Alabama, and Penn State this year. And they were going to get something like $6 million. And their entire athletic budget is $30 million.
Lord.
So, I understand we all want to watch the big boys play. We don't like it when Florida plays the directional type schools.
Correct.
But those schools need that game check for their programs to survive. No doubt. It's also a great experience for those kids, just like we're supposed to have South Alabama come to the Swamp this year. All those kids on that roster wanted to play in the SEC.
No doubt.
They wanted to play big time football. Well, they maybe weren't big enough, fast enough, whatever it was, but they're having a chance to play college football. And I'm afraid that if they don't play those big games, those type programs are going to
fall out. You're worried about the future of those teams, and right. So you hope they can figure out something that will get them to play each other. But again, the TV dollars won't be there for them. And what are the chances of I guess I'm just trying to think of one. Eastern Washington was going to come play Florida, obviously, in the first game of the season. The notion that a team from Spokane or wherever the hell Eastern Washington is going to get on a plane and come to Gainesville play here. Was August 31st? Was that wasn't it?
Somewhere around
that just seems like a little far fetched to me at this point. And you do feel bad because those are buy games, those are checks that those guys. I mean, they fund their athletic department on that, and losing that money is going to be hard to replace. But you gotta. There's no playbook for this. And I mean, I was talking to my friend who covers USF recently, or just last week, and they were going to open the season, I think, at Texas. That was a big deal for South Florida to go play, in Austin. And that, we're talking about we're not talking about Kent State, we're talking about USF or something, but they need that money too.
Absolutely.
So yeah, people want to watch good football. People want to watch football, period, and these kids want to play. And it's just a shame that it's come to this, but how it works out is going to be how it works out, unfortunately.
Well, let's move towards the NFL. If people aren't aware, you're a huge Washington Redskin, or Washington, whatever they're going to be called.
I would say I'm a long-time Washington Redskin fan. I saw a game when Vince Lombardi coached the team, so it's been frustrating last few years of an era that I would say you've even been a part of, as I can see over your left shoulder. Yes,
absolutely. So, your thoughts on the Redskins name change coming up? So now we go to the Redskins hat.
We do. I used to have this conversation with my father quite a bit when he was alive. And I thought 10, 15 years ago when it was controversial, it was controversial long, back in the 90s, I would think, that it would happen in my lifetime, that they would change it. Dan Snyder digging his heels in, whatever, that's fine. He could say, never going to change it. Well, guess what? Once FedEx says we're taking our signage down, we're pulling our $27 million away. Once Pepsi said they were going to do it, once Nike took all Redskin apparel off its website, now all of a sudden Dan Snyder has a stream of consciousness, and you played for that organization, you know how they work a little bit. It's not the same organization it was when the Cook family owned it. He's all about the dollar. Yes, he does want to win and what have you. He just doesn't know how to win. But it's the right time to do it. Obviously, put a lot of pressure on him. I don't really have a problem with it. I got a bunch of buddies of mine, men and women, who are outraged by it. It doesn't outrage me. It's no different, really. Can I do this one too?
Yes, the Washington Bullets.
When the Washington Bullets changed their name to the Washington Wizards because Washington, D.C. was the number one murder rate and gun capital of the world at the time. So there's reason for it, and I really can't sit here and say I'm that upset about it. The Capitals will stay the Capitals, although I guess monuments are in danger too. So
speaking of the Bullets, the Wizards.
Yes.
Bradley Beal, the NBA is going to crank up here at the end of the month. He was the number 2 leading scorer in the NBA. He's decided not to play for multiple reasons, and I'm sure you've talked to him, correct? I
have. I actually talked to him for a story last month. He donated a major gift to the athletic department, and they're going to rename the fuel bar in the basketball strength and conditioning room after him. He was having a phenomenal season last year. If you recall, he had back-to-back games on back-to-back nights, scoring 50 points or more, and he was the first player to do that since Kobe Bryant in 2007. He is at the peak of his career. He signed, obviously, a max extension. In 2 years, he's going to have an option to sign another one, which would be his third contract extension. If he signs it with the Wizards, he'll become the highest-paid player, not just in NBA history, but in team sports history in terms of average salary. I think the number is $54 million a year. He's in a really good place. His team isn't very good, but next year when, John Wall comes back, they sign some of these guys, they'll be better, and they'll be better because Brad Beal, he is playing at an incredibly high level right now. Second only to James Harden in scoring when the league shut down.
And then your major league team, the Washington Nationals, the defending national World Series champs.
Right, that's right.
Back home. Are you excited about Major League Baseball?
Oh, I'm excited about anything. Now, I'm not a big soccer. I'm not watching pro soccer. I watch a little bit of golf, a little bit, but I'm ready to see some of the sports that make the world go round. And I think the Nationals open their season in an empty stadium at home. They'll raise the banner against the Yankees. That'll be kind of cool. But I'm very much a national fan, very much looking forward to trying to defend the title. And if the season goes bust, we're kind of like my daughter's at UVA. She's the 2-time defending basketball champion because they didn't get to crown another one this year. So I would take a second straight or just hold on to the crown for another year if I have to.
Yeah. Chris, so right now, obviously, if people aren't aware, you write for FloridaGators.com, the senior writer there. What have you been keeping yourself busy
I know where we're going with this, yeah. To be a sports writer, it's a tough time to try to find things to write about. But we at FloridaGators.com and our University Athletic Association, they started an initiative called Listen, Learn, and Act. Please go to FloridaGators.com and check it out. Given the situation with social justice that has come up in the last couple months, I've written about Scotty Lewis organizing the peaceful protest he had near his hometown in New Jersey. This Listen, Learn, and Act initiative that the UAA has done. They do Zoom calls or webinars, if you were, in Zoom format, where they have some of these African-American coaches, student athletes, talking about their experiences. And some of it's been very candid. Some of it's been very, very emotional. I encourage the people on your show to go to our website and check that out. The first installment we did was last month. It was the men's basketball team. Guys like Anthony DeRugi and Tyree Appleby, people that your viewers don't know, that have not seen play. They can get an introduction into them and listen to some of their insight. These are great kids. They're going to be good players, and they're going to be prominent faces on this team. And we had one last week with the UF coaching staff. 12 of the 15 coaches were on it, talking about how they're dealing with this, not only from a personal standpoint, but in talking to their teams about this kind of stuff. So that's been some of the more interesting stuff I've done. We'll continue. They're going to continue the Listen, Learn, and Act initiative, but hopefully I get to be writing about some, 2-a-days pretty soon, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, you mentioned having 12 of the 15 coaches or whatever on there. That brought up, Stanford last week got rid of 11 sports now. We're talking rowing and fencing and those type things, but still it affected a lot of collegiate athletes and coaches.
Yes.
If we don't play football this year, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, and let's just use Florida or Alabama, one of the big boys in our conference. Is there any way that they cut any sports, you think, at one of the major universities?
You are putting me on the spot a little bit. So
let's not say Florida. Let's use Georgia or Alabama.
You got to give these ADs and credit right now, because I think they've gotten on these calls and gotten in these meetings and said our priorities right now are to not cut sports and not cut staff. The first real staff kind of thing I saw, Vanderbilt did some whack their communications department last week, which was kind of alarming. That's the first kind of thing I saw from the Southeastern Conference. But I think until there's some real push comes to shove and we know something definitive, I think they're holding on hope that these things can keep afloat long enough to get to football. But from a personal standpoint, I give Scott Strickland all the credit in the world. He has said, we're not cutting sports, we're not cutting scholarships, we're not furloughing people, we're not cutting jobs. And he's vowed to maintain that, but you can only do it so long. So we're just kind of in a waiting game. But I feel bad for some of those things. You mentioned fencing and those things, and those aren't obviously high revenue sports, crew, what, but those are athletes that work hard, and their sport are gone and their chance for competition is gone. And you hope they have some kind of avenue where they can pursue it. Maybe they can turn them into club sports and compete locally out there, but I don't know what their situation is.
Yeah, because I'm curious, because I know sometimes, in football, a coach may come to a kid and say, look, we're going to keep you on scholarship, but you're not part of the team. I may have described it the wrong way.
No. Brian Fox, for example.
Yes. If that were to happen, it doesn't matter what school it is. Let's just say they take away women's bowling. Okay. I wonder I guess it depends on what school we're talking about. They may go to that athlete and say, "Hey, we're going to keep you on scholarship. We're just getting rid of your sport,
That's right.
but we're gonna honor that scholarship." Is that possible?
I think it is but when you start talking about crew and you start talking about equestrian, you start talking about, I don't know, there's handball, I think there's water polo. I, I don't know how much money is being allocated relative to scholarships because you talk about baseball, which is as close to a revenue sport as possible. It's only 11.7 scholarships.
Yeah,
so I don't know what the scholarships would be for some of those other things, but we're still giving you books. We're still paying for two classes, however that works. I would imagine they would try to do that as close as they can. But when there's no money coming in, there's going to be less money going out. Obviously.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about those. Sports aren't full scholarship. Well, Chris, we appreciate you taking the time joining the show. You're going to have to get on Amazon and order a new Washington whatever hat. Right. What are they going to be called?
Well, I've always thought they should be called the Washington Monuments, but I think the monuments are all going to be canceled too, so they can't do that either. So we'll see what happens.
All right, man. Well, stay safe, buddy. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
See you, Shane. Thanks.
That's Chris Gary from FloridaGators.com. You can follow him on Twitter at GatorsChris. We're going to take our final time out of the program. When we come back, we'll wrap this thing up. You're watching and listening to Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
Time out! Time out! Hey! Time out! Time out! Time out! There we go. Good.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills.
Let's give them something to cheer for now.
Our gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Area Rug Masters, your number one choice in Gainesville for all your area rug cleaning services. Meldon Law, where you matter most. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte.
Bob in trouble, gets ready to throw, big hit.
Our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, The Digital Mortgage Guide, Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank, Gator Bait Media, Davis Gainesville Chevrolet, Miapa Latin Cafe, Gators Dockside, Aikido America Martial Arts and After School, Doreen Weeby Realtor, Caldwell Banker MM Parish, Radware, Style Cuts, Wrap Spot, Ironwood Golf Course, TB Financial, Chris Doring Mortgage, Meadowbrook Golf Course, Darshakow Insurance, MB Listings, and Pomodoro Cafe. If you are interested in promoting your business on this show, you can visit our website, podupwithshane.com, and click on the Advertise button or call Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support this show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
He's looking, still looking. He's going for the end zone. He's got a touchdown!
Welcome back to a Monday edition of Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning. This Day in Sports is brought to you by Area Rug Masters. Don't fight your area rugs. Take them to Area Rug Masters. With their convenient curbside services, you will never need to go anywhere else. Call them at 352-448-5999. This Day in Sports, back in 1985, the New York Yankees retired Roger Maris's number 9 jersey. Don't forget, at Peachland Dentistry, it's Gator Nation's number one choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Visit them at peachlanddental.com. We got a couple of Facebook Live comments here, brought to you by Melvin Lowe. Rick says, no, not women's bowling. And Jeff says, and I was not knocking women's bowling, so I don't want to get a bunch of emails. I just couldn't think of a non-revenue sport off the top of my head. Jeff says, on Facebook Live, brought to you by Melvin Law, where you matter most. Don't joke, my wife was on the UF bowling team and carried her 16-pound ball across campus. I wonder if they still have a bowling team in Florida. But I wasn't knocking them. I just couldn't think of anything else off the top of my head. But that's going to be a wrap for today's show, folks. It's brought to you by Wrap Spot. Be safe out there. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. Tuesday edition, we're going to have John Kitna. His son is a quarterback committed here, longtime NFL guy, former teammate of mine. and we'll have Buddy Martin on his normal Tuesday. Be safe out there. Take care, folks. See ya.